This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome to the Monday Night Raw review on this Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. And I hope everyone's doing well here on this beginning of September. And if you're interested in NFL, well, your wait is over very shortly. If you have also joined a fantasy football team and drafted, well, like myself, well, you're gearing up, right? You're gearing up, making your last-minute trades and shaking your head over picks you didn't make. And that'll be starting shortly, too. And a lot of us will be losing friends over it, right? So that is what's heading our way. But this is the WWE Podcast. We're going to talk about Monday Night Raw. But first, I'd invite you to check out our last episode that we did. I was last night with Anthony DeMarco, where we covered the topic of CM Punk potentially coming to WWE and the Payback kind of final thoughts on the event and looking forward. So I encourage you to check that out. And the reason I bring that up is that also we have a bit of an announcement to make that this coming Friday, those of you that follow the show know that Anthony DeMarco does a retro show every single Friday where he picks a topic of yesteryear and dives deep into it. But this Friday will be the final retro show that he does. Now, he's not leaving the show, all right? I know many of you enjoy the conversations that we have together, and that will be going nowhere, okay? The current state of WWE that Anthony and I do is remaining intact. However, retro is going away. Moving forward, I still may post some old retro shows so that you guys can get your dose of retro wrestling from yesteryear. But what will be happening is he will be moving his new show, hosting After Dark on the WWE Podcast, starting next Friday. Okay, so it'll be still dropping every single week, but it'll be behind the Patreon paywall and at the SmackDown tier and higher on Patreon. That'll be Anthony DeMarco taking over for the hosting responsibilities of After Dark. Now, we do want your guys' input, okay? We want your input. As we were, before the show yesterday, we had a lengthy conversation about, what maybe you should do, and, because he wanted to switch things up from retro and talk about things more current and that kind of thing. But let me know your guys' thoughts, okay? Because we want your input on retro, or rather we want your input on what Anthony DeMarco should talk about on After Dark. Do you guys want it wrestling focused? Do you not want it wrestling focused? I will say though that After Dark is an adult only show and it is not for the kids, okay? So put the wives and the kids to bed, as they say, although I know we have a significant number of women that listen to the show. My point is it's definitely an adult only content because it's no holds barred. We hold back here. It's PG, but anything goes on the After Dark show. So if you guys are interested in that, let me know. If you think you'd like to hear him talk about a specific topic on a weekly basis, if you want a Cody Rhodes rant segment, something like that, that seemed to be very popular among many of you, let me know. Okay, serious inquiries only. You can reach out to me at the WWE Podcast email, which is mailbag@wwepodcast.com. You can send me a tweet at wrestling_audio on X or Twitter, or on Instagram at WWE_podcast. Check us out there. But that's the best way, to let me know what you think. What do you want Anthony DeMarco to do or to talk about? Because he is going to be moving exclusively over to the Patreon side of things for his own show, not the current state. So, guys, feedback would be appreciated. So, that's our little announcement that we're going to make. and interested to hear what you guys think. But speaking of Patreon, good time to join. Patreon.com/WWE Podcast for everything ad-free. And also Apple's podcast offers a direct direct ability to access ad-free right on the app of Apple Podcasts. So, all right. So, Monday Night Raw, everybody. Let's talk about it, as it was an eventful one that did not feature Cody Rhodes or Kevin Owens. Can't say I was sad to not see Cody in person. He was advertised, though, for next week on Raw, and Kevin Owens didn't appear. I would imagine he didn't appear. My speculative mind is thinking that it was because of, he's banged up. I mean, he took a hell of a lot of bumps at Payback, and so hopefully he's all right. I don't see and hear any major news coming out that he's injured or he's going to be out for some time. But boy, did he throw caution to the wind at Payback with the bumps that he took. But let's talk specifically here about Monday Night Raw. We got main event Jey Uso, who is joining Monday Night Raw. Again, why the hell we're crediting Cody Rhodes for this is a bit of a head scratching. It's a bit of a head scratcher, as they say, because he's talent. He's not a part of the management team. He is not involved in any kind of upper, or decision-making processes or major trades that I know of. So why we're supposed to all be thankful to Cody to bring Jey Uso to Monday Night Raw is ridiculous on its face. But that aside, main event Jey Uso did come out, pretty big pop, and he came to the crowd and got into the ring, and shortly interrupted by Sami Zayn. Now, it was cool to see these two together again. A lot of history there. Big reaction for Sami. And they did acknowledge, though, that, Sami Zayn mentioned that the guys in the back are still, that you still got some enemies back there because of everything that you've done, which was nice to hear, that they're not just going to all of a sudden, because he's on their show, forgive and forget everything that he's done with the Bloodline. The Bloodline have run through a lot of talent and have many, many enemies over 3 years. So it's good to see that, everyone's just not going to, turn the page on no hard feelings, man. We're all's good, right? It makes sense. Now, the other thing of adopting officially the main event Jey Uso tagline or catchphrase or whatever name is, what do you do when he's not in the main event? It's going to be kind of a parody of himself, no? I mean, Jey Uso's not always going to be in the main event, but he calls himself main event Jey Uso. So is it going to be embarrassing that you're calling yourself something that you're not going to be in a lot? I don't see Jey Uso consistently having a main event position. So it's a cool name, I guess, but also one that can be dangerously mocked when you're, if you're fighting for the Intercontinental title, or you're you're in some kind of personal feud, but not in the top program. Like, you're not battling for the championship all the time, so that is just, it's a name that is just waiting to be mocked by a heel, and rightfully so. You didn't really think this one through, right? So that is something that's going to be, I like the name, but it's also one that's very much low-hanging fruit for a heel to knock Jey on, when he's never in the main event, or rarely in the main event, to call himself something that he clearly isn't. Is going to be kind of interesting to see how he responds to that. So, nonetheless, it's cool to see Jey there and on his own and doing his own thing. I like the move. So that's a positive. And seeing Sami and Jey in the same ring, boy, do they still have chemistry together. And I love seeing them together. And Jey saying that it doesn't seem very Uso of me at the end, and giving a handshake and eventually a hug, and they go their separate ways. There's a cool opening to Raw. Okay, yeah, no two ways about it, given all of the history. So, All right. The next segment here, Drew McIntyre and Matt Riddle versus the Viking Raiders. Interestingly, the very first match here did not appear on Hulu. That's really it's quite striking. First of all, not only is it striking that the first match didn't appear on Hulu, which I can't remember the last time that happened, but also name value of Drew McIntyre not appearing on Hulu is also striking. But I did see the match off of Hulu, and I thought it was fine. We got a victory of or a defeat, depending on how you look at it, of Drew and Riddle, who lost in about 10 minutes in a tornado tag team match to the Viking Raiders. It's because, if you didn't see this match, if you're also a Hoolian, is that a thing? A fellow Hulu watcher, this is the description of the final segment of this particular match. Kofi ran out and stopped the Viking Raiders and attacked them both. Kingston accidentally caught Riddle with a kick, and the Viking Raiders took out Kingston and then put Riddle through a table with their finish, and then Eric covered Riddle and got the 3 counts. So, interesting developments here. Number one, having the Viking Raiders get a victory over McIntyre and Riddle is significant, but more significant, of course, is Kofi, who accidentally kicked Riddle, and that allowed the Viking Raiders to pick up the victory. That's noteworthy because is this, dare I say, hints of a heel turn for Kofi? Or is this a simple miscommunication? You didn't see, I can't remember the last time any members of the New Day accidentally did anything that wasn't intentional that could potentially turn them heel. It's interesting, again, from that perspective. Not that I care to see anything at all with Kofi Kingston and his character. He's just, as you know, not exactly on my favorites wrestlers list right now, but I respect what he can do in the ring. And if this is a potential heel turn for Kofi, bring it on, man. Bring it on. So, but Drew McIntyre, I'll say this. He is collateral damage. He needs to get the hell out of this. I know that he's just kind of spinning his wheels right now. He's in a holding pattern. We know that he belongs in a championship match. We know that he could turn heel and turn on Seth eventually after he's done. After Seth is done with Shinsuke at I'd imagine Fastlane, although it wasn't officially announced, then Drew could get himself into the picture. Now we did just get a heel turn by Shinsuke, but Drew turning heel would be more significant, and it would be balanced out by the major babyface acquisition of Jey. So you do kind of need another major heel to balance the equation, if you will. I mean, more evidence if you're looking for it, and more support for a Drew heel turn that we're all waiting for, and would be a revitalization of Drew's career. Not that his career's in trouble, it's just kind of been lackluster as of late. All right, moving on. So let's talk about Seth coming out. He delivered a promo. He said Nakamura did everything he said he was going to do. And Rollins said there were points in the match he didn't know if he would be able to get up. And Rollins showed off his belt and said he's still champion. And then Rollins called out Nakamura for a match. And Shinsuke came out and he spoke in Japanese. And he said Rollins said he wouldn't pretend to understand what he said, but he assumed Nakamura was accepting his challenge for a match and would urge and call for him to come to the ring. And Rollins was like basically telling him, I'll give you a title match right now. And Nakamura said no many times. And Rollins left the ring and fought Nakamura after that. And security ran out, pulled him apart. Nakamura broke free and delivered kicks to the back of Rollins. And Ricochet ran out to help Rollins. So the Good Samaritan of Ricochet, which, I have to say, Ricochet has gone back to irrelevance. Now it's weird to say that because he's in a main event segment here. I should say his character has gone back to what it boringly was just kind of this good guy, good-hearted, does the right thing, good gosh golly, kind of dude. While he can go in the ring like no one's business, his character, where his character is positioned is, after losing to Logan Paul, has been non-existent, and that was my concern. But I don't know, his character is just, it's too plain Jane for me, too pure. He's the moral compass, all the time, and doing the right thing to help Rollins. But he was able to get himself a match with Nakamura, and this was, you'd imagine, just them saving Rollins and Nakamura for a fast lane. I mean, this just has to be it. But we got Nakamura beating Ricochet by DQ in 9.5 minutes, but not because Ricochet was beat outright, which I thought they would do. Typically when somebody who is not in a significant program versus who takes on somebody that is in a significant program, they lose. That person that's not in the program loses because they need to build the person that's currently in the story that you care about. But that's not what happened here. And I like the decision, because when was the last time Shinsuke Nakamura was purposefully disqualified in a match where he consciously made the decision to turn brutal and beat someone down? Well, that's what happened here. He beat Ricochet, and it also protects Ricochet. Yeah, so that's also the other double-edged, the other side of the coin, which is a good thing. He wrapped a chair around his neck, around Ricochet's neck. And then that's when Rollins came out and attacked Nakamura. But this is what the hilarious part was, and I don't even know if this is a knock or just funny, maybe a little of both, is that after Rollins attacked Nakamura, security comes out, and instead of helping the guy that is about to be paralyzed with a chair wrapped around his neck, what does security do? They pull Rollins off of Shinsuke, the very man who was about to deliver a neck-snapping chair shot to Ricochet. It's like, no. It was just funny. Like, you're seeing this helpless man about to be paralyzed, okay? And the security's more worried about Rollins attacking the guy who was about to do that. It was just like, it was just a bad optic. Hilarious, too. So, I don't know if anyone else thought that same thing or didn't care, but it was funny to me. I'm like, shouldn't you guys be helping the other guy? Like, forget about Rollins. You open your eyes, help the guy that's about to be killed. But again, I don't know if it's a knock or just funny or both. Okay, so Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley were then shown watching everything play out backstage, where Ripley was advising Priest not tonight, holding on to Money in the Bank briefcase. So again, great job to kind of add another layer to Shinsuke's character, that he's more violent. He doesn't care if he wins. He wants to hurt. I like this. I mean, Shinsuke Nakamura in 3 weeks' time has gone from mild reactions, kind of lukewarm, don't really care what happens in your match, to this guy could potentially be world champion and I wouldn't hate it. It's amazing. All right. So we then got Jackie Redmond, who interviewed Zoe Stark on backstage, on the ring set, the backstage ring set, I should say, and asked if her partnership with Stratus was over. Stark said Stratus is one of the greatest of all time, but nobody pushes her. And then Shayna showed up, and she said she was wondering when Stark was going to get rid of the dead weight, and said they had unfinished. Stark said they had unfinished business and challenged Baszler to a match, and she accepted. I like this. It's nice to see also Baszler back. That's been the story of Baszler's career. She goes, ape, you know what, starts killing people, and then just disappears. And now she's back. She's coming out of her hole again, like sticking her head out of the ground. And I think actually, though, Stark and Baszler could have a hell of a program. This one I'm looking forward to. All right. Judgment Day then came out, and Dom was booed heavily as always when he boasted about they took home more gold. As I guess the narrative that they're trying to push is they're dripping in gold. That was the preferred selected phrase that everyone regurgitated, from the announcers to the in-ring wrestlers. It's always weird when the announcers say the exact phrase that is then repeated in ring seconds later, as if they all had a meeting beforehand to make sure that this phrase is driven home. It's weird. But whatever. I mean, it's fine. They do have, each member does have gold, but they don't have all the gold. Okay, that narrative needs to be pushed aside. I mean, they do have championships, but arguably they don't even have the top 2 championships. Okay, they don't. So anyway, I like this. I like the visual of the Judgment Day carrying gold. Every member has gold. I like it. Okay, I do. So Ripley said there's one thing that was bothering her. She said the focus should be on their accomplishments, but they're talking about Jey Uso coming to Raw and what that means for the Bloodline. Ripley said the Bloodline has fallen and Judgment Day is the most dominant faction in WWE. Priest was going to speak, but then was interrupted. So before we get to JD McDonough, it was interesting that Ripley specifically called out the Bloodline, saying they've fallen. I wouldn't say they've fallen. They've just kind of been backburnered. And arguably, they're only down one guy, okay, because Jimmy wants back in. He'll eventually get back in. So it's still Roman and Solo, and then a returning Jimmy and the Wise Man, okay? So they're still only down one guy. So I wouldn't say they've fallen, but Judgment Day calling out another heel faction is interesting, to say the least. But JD came out, and McDonough said that it was good, or rather, he said that Priest's briefcase has to go. And then McDonough unveiled a purple and silver custom Money in the Bank briefcase that said Senor Money in the Bank, and he traded away the green one. Now, no one's talking about this, and it may not be a detail that is discussed, or maybe it was a detail that was overlooked, or I caught on to something, and that is that briefcase that JD traded or gave to Priest, who then just kind of tossed aside his old green one. First of all, I like the Senor deal. It's something that no one's ever been called. I like it. No problem. But we're supposed to believe that the actual contract is located inside of the briefcase. That's what we're supposed to believe. So that when he cashes it in, you know, the contents inside are the actual contract. I mean, I know no one opens up the briefcase to check before the bell rings. Like, they don't have a referee unlock the briefcase, check the contract, make sure it's there, and then they ring the bell. But it's an interesting detail that if he tossed away the Money in the Bank briefcase, the original, and JD gave him one that is brand new, well, the brand new one has nothing inside. Unless it's a copy of the contract. Again, this may be something I'm overthinking, but perhaps what's going to happen is when it's time for Priest to cash in, when he sees a moment, he's like, oh my God, here we go. And Seth is down, and it's, oh my God, you know, Priest is going to become champion, and he cashes in the purple one. Somehow they're going to have to reveal that, well, there was no actual contract in there. Right? It's empty. You gave away the original. JD didn't put the contract in this one. It's an empty briefcase. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you guys think about that. Do you think it's something that I'm overlooking, or do you think it's actually a situation that could happen, where then the further wedging of the relationship, further fraying of the relationship between JD and Priest occurs? You know, I don't know. It's possible. But all right, so Sami came out, who also seems to be kind of everywhere these days, and said he didn't see 5 champions. He saw 5 championships stealing turds, and he said a special beating is owed to Dom, and given that he's the one that ultimately cost the tag titles of Kevin and Sami, and that he asked Dom if he wanted to face him, and McDonough stepped up and said Dom wasn't fighting anyone, and that McDonough said Dom wasn't the only one who screwed them and told Zayn to fight him. And then Zayn said, sure. So we did get that, and that came for later in the night. But after this, we got a lot of, and throughout the show, we got a lot of past Intercontinental champions from The Rock to Stone Cold, of course, the Honky Tonk Man, Jericho. I mean, was Jericho on there? In my mind, he is. We got a lot of previous champions, men that have held the Intercontinental Championship. Shawn Michaels. And that was fun. That was a nice tribute to the IC belt. One that I think is, of the only few championships in WWE that has a clean lineage. And what I mean by that is, of course, you have so many different frayings and versions of the top belts. It was the WWE, but then it became one title with the Universal, but now it became an undisputed championship. But like where the lineages is kind of foggy and murky at best. Whereas the IC belt has been very steadfast. It's very much that's it. There's no diversion of legacy. And it also shows you the power of pulling in the legacy of a championship. And one that I think they should have done with the World Heavyweight Championship, that they just pulled out of nowhere and decided to not show you past World Heavyweight Champions and pretend it was a brand new belt. Bad idea. It's the opposite of what you want to do, I think, to immediately add equity to a belt. You want to show past champions instead of just starting new with the belt. But anyway, my point about all this was, you knew the moment that they started showing past champions, there's no chance in hell that Gunther is going to lose that belt. They have the chance to break a record. WWE's going to do it. If they didn't want you to know about it, they wouldn't have talked about it so much. Now, it's not to say that, of course, Chad Gable is not a suitable opponent. He is. But let's look at the bigger picture here. Chad Gable is not Gunther. Chad Gable is not looked at in the same regard as Gunther is. Gunther right now is being looked at as a future world champion. Gunther right now is being looked at as potentially being in one of the main events of WrestleMania. I hate saying one of, because to me there's only one. But playing their game, their lingo here, he is. Gunther is positioned to be in one of the main events of Mania. And he's now the longest running Intercontinental Champion of all time. That is a hell of an accolade. One that right now, in some ways, supersedes Roman Reigns' run. Not in length, but in meaning. Because Roman still is not at the point where he can say he's the longest running champion of all time. But Intercontinental has so much legacy going back to Pat Patterson that it arguably has, again, the clean lineage makes the difference, but it has more respect in some ways than Roman's belt. So that's because it's been looked at as like the workman's belt, right? The workhorse, the workman, and Gunther has added so much value to that belt. My God, the dude is just tailor-made to anything he touches. He adds respect to. He is just, he's pulled from another century somehow. I mean, he was just a guy that I feel like he doesn't even know what an iPhone is. You know what I mean? He looks like a dude that like has a rotary phone at home. And, he's out in the woods, cutting down trees, making his own house. I don't know. He looks just like a guy that is pulled from the 1800s and he was transported to 2023. And I love it. I love everything about Gunther. Everything. And he is going to be a future world champion. There is just that's a guarantee, barring some catastrophic injury. So, good stuff here. We'll talk about that in a minute. We got a backstage segment here with Raquel speaking to Adam Pearce, who said that he would make whatever they spoke about official, and that would I would imagine be another world championship match, women's world championship match, which we did get. I believe that was announced is it next week? The women's world championship with Rhea and Raquel. I think it is. So fine. Again, I wasn't a big fan of their first match at Payback. I know a lot of you liked it more than I did. I don't think they had great chemistry. I feel like their styles kind of clashed. That's okay. Not asking them to put on a 5-star clinic. I just didn't think they had a good chemistry. And the fact also that, with Raquel Rodriguez trying to be a babyface, it's a forced narrative that I'm not buying into. All right. So let's see. Pierce then mentioned Piper Niven was not medically cleared, and Green asked if he was talking about how people would say the women's tag titles are cursed. And Pierce wondered if it ever occurred to her that it's not the titles that are cursed, and Green started going off about Rodriguez and called her a loser, only to babyface her once she realized Raquel was standing behind her, and then Pierce then booked them in a match of Shayna versus Zoe Stark. So, this match lasted 8 minutes and 50 seconds, where Shayna did beat Zoe Stark. But let's talk about the finish of this, okay? Stark was in control. Baszler avoided her finish and rolled to the floor. Stark went to the apron and splashed Baszler on the floor. Stark then sent Baszler back inside the ring and went for a maneuver, but Baszler caught her in the Karafuda clutch. Stark got back to her feet. Baszler reapplied the hold. Stark got back to her feet again and then dropped to her knees, and the referee called for the bell. Afterward, Baszler celebrated her win and then approached Stark and told her she gave her a better fight than Ronda Rousey did, and Stark said Baszler gave her a better fight than Trish did, and then they bumped fists. So this is weird. Now, weird on a couple levels. One, that they had Shayna beat a rising star clean. Two, that they're both still apparently healed, specifically Zoe. Unless they're trying to turn Shayna babyface instead of turning or keeping Zoe Stark heel, even though she appeared to turn babyface after retaliating against Trish at Payback. So I don't know what's going on here. I don't know how to feel about this because I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. But apparently there's just a mutual respect there with Zoe and Shayna after she lost, after Zoe was beaten by Shayna. So kind of a wait and see approach for me. Okay. Let's go here. I mean, again, the women's tag titles are cursed. That's just a fact of life. They need to just do away with the women's tag belts. I'm sorry. Until they decide to take those belts seriously, consistently. I know that's a word that's an oxymoron with the women's tag belts. I don't want anything to do with them. They really are cursed on top of it. All right. Rodriguez versus Chelsea Green. Rodriguez beat Green in 1 minute and 40 seconds with the Tejada bomb. And then after the match, Raquel took the mic and said she spoke with Adam Pearce about the actions of Ripley and Dom at Payback and said she was getting her rematch and Dom would be barred from ringside and Rodriguez would see Ripley next week. That's right. Next week for the championship. Okay. So fine. Not a chance that Raquel's going to win, but still, she gets a rematch. And I don't know who Ripley would be facing, who should be facing at Payback, or rather Fastlane. But after this, you'd imagine Raquel and Rhea go their separate ways. Okay. The third hour of Raw, the final hour of Raw, we had Drew was shown calling for Kofi in the backstage area. Matt Riddle told McIntyre to calm down, and McIntyre vented about Jey Uso showing up. He said he would give him a pass, but he would be watching, and if he screws up, he'll take it up with Cody, who brought Jey to Raw. Yeah, that makes sense. That was an encouraging segment because just that quick mention by Drew immediately shot him to the main event conversation because it shows he's not just focused on this silly tag team with Riddle. So Kofi showed up though and did apologize for costing McIntyre and Riddle the tag match. And McIntyre didn't think it was a coincidence that Kingston took out Riddle a week after he accidentally took out Woods. And McIntyre said he would keep his eyes open just in case any more accidents happened. And Kingston told Riddle to talk to his boy. So tensions continue to rise. Okay. Miz then came out and says he didn't lose. He exposed LA Knight for who he is. And Miz introduced John Cena as his guest for Miz TV. And Cena's music played. The crowd went crazy, but Cena didn't come out. And Cole said, "I can't see him." I guess that was a clever little deal here. Miz acted like Cena was in the ring. Obviously, he wasn't there. And then Miz said he's been able to see Cena and see right through him for the last 18 years. Miz said Cena was sitting in the chair and he would translate for him, and asked if LA Knight paid him or offered him a job during these hard times. And he acted like Cena told him that he conspired with Knight, and then said Knight's victory should be thrown out. And then he gave a skull-crushing finale to no one, which was funny, but I'll give it a pass because it wasn't supposed to be comedy. It was kind of an inadvertent comedy, but also had a serious overtone to it. And so I'll let it pass. But this was all about trying to get revenge on Knight, who I was surprised didn't show up on Raw. But this program is clearly continuing another month. So here's the thing. As I was thinking about SmackDown and Raw and where they're going, I think this is the final pay-per-view before things start to get super serious with Survivor Series and then right into WrestleMania. Because at Survivor Series, you can start really thinking about Rumble winners and then Mania. This is the final kind of cleanup programs before we start to dive into that. This is, Fastlane is going to be the final wrap up of the current programs and starting things new at Survivor Series. So that's how I'm viewing this next month. But okay, let's move on here. We got then Sami Zayn versus JD McDonough. And JD beat Sami in 8:05. But it was because the finish of this match was Dominic showing up. He pulled McDonough out of the ring as Zayn was setting up for the Helluva Kick. Zayn was left in the ring and he attacked Dom at ringside, but Zayn threw McDonough back inside the ring and followed. Dom climbed up on the apron and distracted Sami, who allowed McDonough to roll him up for the 3 count. So once again, Dominic is responsible for a victory for the Judgment Day. And then after the match, Zayn attacked Dom. He was about to get set up for a Helluva Kick, but McDonough came back and saved Dom, who eventually got a Helluva Kick of his own. McDonough, that is, as Dom escaped. I like that. That's good. You don't want, again, I know people want to see Dom get beat up, and it is fun, but it also is something you don't want to do too often. Your biggest heat draw, you shouldn't have him take finishes too often. It's something that you save. But still, so, as Wade Barrett said, someone's getting a Helluva Kick come hell or high water. One way or another, someone's getting a Helluva Kick. I mean, Zayn was hell-bent on hitting a Helluva Kick, and he finally did. And I'll tell you, that is one hell of a kick that Zayn has. See what I did there? Okay. All right. So we got a reminder of the Tiffany Stratton and Becky Lynch exchange. So Becky Lynch will be kind of moving on to NXT, or taking a detour for the time being to NXT. And then we got Gunther versus Chad Gable in the main event. This was 15 minutes, and it's what you expect this match to be. It was physical. It was fun. It was a match that, if they had this on, if you were told that this program is going to be, on Monday Night Raw every week for the next 4 weeks, you'd be like, okay, cool. They just have that difficult to manufacture chemistry. And Chad Gable is all the better coming out of this program, even though he lost. He's the first one to, quote unquote, have a victory over Gunther, so he can take that and put it on his resume. But Gunther continues his streak, and Chad Gable has been elevated in this program, and that's really all you can ask. That's really all you can ask. This was an execution. This program was executed to perfection. I mean, you have all objections, or rather all objectives accomplished. Gunther retains. It shows that Gunther can be taken to the limit and find that new gear. Chad shows you that he's not just this comedy act with a couple of cute catchphrases, that he can go, and reminded you that he's an Olympian. That was great. And also they added this wrinkle of Chad's family in the front row and his daughters. This, I don't know. I don't think this was manufactured, but his daughter was crying after he lost. I was kind of laughing, but also felt sympathy towards his daughter, who might have been, I don't know, 8 to 10 years old, one of his daughters anyway. So it also added depth to Chad's character. You know, he has a family, he has a wife, his daughters, you know, like, that's cool. And so it also continues to vilify Gunther for spoiling this otherwise what would have been a magical moment to celebrate with his family ringside. Instead, his daughters have to watch him get his ass kicked, and then they legitimately cry. That was brilliant, but also uncomfortable. It's kind of a mixed, kind of a mixed salad of things. But I loved it. I mean, this was also, again, a heck of a moment for Gunther, who didn't need any outside interference to beat Gable. I also enjoyed that part of it. We didn't see Imperium come out and cost Gable the victory. We didn't see Otis out there or Maxine Dupree. It was a mano-a-mano, pure wrestling match, and it was awesome. And I think it might be the first time that Chad Gable main evented Raw. I think. And if that's the case, love it. I mean, and I think, and what I hope is, and this is what my hope is for Shinsuke as well, that when you ultimately come out of the program, as you know, they're likely not going to win the belts. For Shinsuke, the world title, and obviously for Gable, the IC title. You know they're not going to win the belts. But that WWE continues to do relevant things with them and not put them back in their comfort zone of what they were before. Because all of this would have been for nothing. You know, all this brilliant character development for Gable and Shinsuke would have been for nothing. You know, and I think the fans are hoping the same thing. Not everybody can be in the main event title picture, we know that. But to put them in main event, or put them in relevant programs and not just go back into obscurity, you know, sitting in catering or doing match or having programs that mean absolutely nothing, filler. No. There's something here with both of these men. So when they're both out of the title picture and Gable seems to be out of it, when Shinsuke's out of it after Payback, or I keep saying that, after Fastlane, hopefully they continue that with Shinsuke. But overall, a good show. I enjoyed this. And don't forget, guys, we got John Cena on SmackDown the next 6 SmackDowns. Hopefully he's not in a ridiculous bow and tie trying to make us all laugh as if we're watching, you know, Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm not trying to end the show on a bad note here, but hopefully we get serious, a more serious, I don't need him deadly serious, but a more serious Cena on Friday. And I would think that's also the case because we're likely going to see Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, who are facing Seth Rollins and John Cena at the India Super Show, or I think it's what's it called? Super Show or I forget what it is, Superstar Spectacle or something in India. I don't know how or why they put these 4 men together. They just like kind of pulled it out of a hat. It's a weird matchup. They're all going in cold, but you would think that since John's in an actual match, he wouldn't be so kind of tongue in cheek and, you know, doing his comedy routine, which is always just god awful coming from John Cena. He's a brilliant talent on the microphone. Okay. He is a surgeon on the microphone, but he is just ultra untalented when it comes to comedy on the mic as the John Cena character. is just so bad. It's not my cup of tea. He goes from like the best of all time on the mic to me, and I think he is in WWE anyway, one of the best, if not the best on the microphone of all time, to a cartoon parody of himself that isn't taking what he's doing seriously, exposes the business while he's on camera, and is cringeworthy. It's the most polarizing extremes for me when I see John Cena do those things where I'm like, this guy is so damn good on the mic, no one can touch him, to a character that I cringe at. I'm embarrassed by. I am embarrassed watching him. I get secondhand embarrassment. But then he can turn around and cut a promo that just leaves your jaw on the floor. So that's how I feel about John. Again, deserves to be one of the greatest and is one of the greatest of all time, even though they're trying to tell us he is. It's decided, guys. It's just been decided that he is the greatest of all time. It's just overnight. Okay, he is now being introduced with that title. I'm not a fan of that, but anyway, that does it for me on the Monday Night Raw review, everybody. Again, announcement, Anthony DeMarco is going to Patreon starting next Friday. It'll be a weekly show that is dropped every single Friday on the Patreon side of things for the SmackDown tier and above. He'll be taking over the After Dark show. Send us topics, send us ideas for what you want him to talk about. And that'll be exclusively, yes, it's behind a paywall, but I think it's a great way to also grow our listener base and be able to bring in some new listeners. I know many of you have asked me about Patreon, and many of you have taken the free trial and taken advantage of that. And speaking of, I'm glad I reminded myself, I do want to give a shout out to, while we are talking about it, our latest patrons who have joined us in just the last couple of days, I'd imagine, from Payback. And that is Preston Carpenter. Welcome to I thought I had another one. Oh, Dino and Preston Carpenter. Welcome. Hope you guys enjoy your free trials and maybe join us full time. So that'll do it for me, guys. Hit us up on Apple Podcasts. There's an ad-free button right there. There's also a free trial there if you want to check us out. There's also a yearly option if you don't want to pay per month and you want 2 months totally free ad-free. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, WWEpodcast.com. You can go VIP and go ad-free, or WWE Podcast Shop for all your merch. So that'll do it for me, everybody. For all this shameless self-promotion, I will stop there, and I'll be back tomorrow with the mailbag. So I'm sure that'll be a fun experience with a lot of Payback reactions and obviously moving forward what your thoughts are. So that's it for me. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.